Now, if we think about principal quality and teacher turnover, do we know, how much time do we have left on this one?
It's already 11, but... So
well, we could, you know what, why don't I just kind of sum up the other two pieces in 2 minutes, okay? So one of the things we're trying to do is to see teachers leave schools every year. There's a lot of teacher turnover in the U.S., particularly in high-poverty schools. So we want to see, does the character of turnover tend to be different in schools with principals we estimate to be more effective? And the level of turnover. So a lot of people worry in the States that the real problem in these schools is the amount of teachers who turn over every year. I'm less worried. I think Rick Hanishek and I are much less worried about that, because if the school is getting rid of ineffective teachers, that's actually a benefit to the school. So what we do is we try to take a look here at, in the schools, when we compare schools on the basis of who's leaving among the teachers, are the schools in which the least effective teachers tend to be more predominant among the leavers, are those schools more likely to have a highly effective principal? And the answer that we find is yes. Though there's a caveat in that there can be a little bit of a mechanical relationship in the way we've estimated it, and we have to go back and do it again and make sure that we're using non-overlapping years to estimate the principal effect and the patterns of turnover. But so far, we found that that, in fact, is one mechanism through which principals influence the quality of the school. And what's interesting is this slide shows that these are the teacher transitions by the quality of the principal and the poverty level. And what you can see is the bottom quality principals, we estimate, tend to have by far the highest teacher turnover. So this is consistent with this concern that teacher turnover is bad. But then the schools that have the next highest level of teacher turnover tend to be among the schools with the most effective principals. If you look everywhere but in the highest poverty schools, that's true. Now, the other thing that I want to show you is this table, and I'll basically conclude with this table. And this table looks at principal transitions. So this worry that effective principals are really more likely to leave high-poverty schools because it gives them better job opportunities. So across the top, we divide principals into quartiles on the basis of their effectiveness, and these numbers report the share of principals that leave after 3 years. So we take all the principals who were in their first 3 years at a school, and then we look at the probability of transitioning after the 3rd year. And it's the least effective principals that are most likely to leave a school. And so that's actually a very reassuring finding. And that's true for all of the poverty quartiles. And the share of principals who stay tends to rise with effectiveness, though it is true that among the most effective principals, they tend to be more likely to leave than those in the sort of 2nd and 3rd effectiveness category. It may be that these principals are getting lured away by other districts, and if you notice, this is not true at the lowest poverty schools. The highest quality principals are the ones most likely to stay. It also may be true that these principals are being drawn into senior administrative positions. Now, the one finding that we have that's a concern is we'd like to know those principals who leave, where do they go? And if you look at the highest poverty schools, the least effective principals, 1/3 of the ones who leave, so 12% out of the 37% who leave, they become principals at another school. So there's this worry, I think politically, that it becomes easier to fire a principal if you're willing to give him a good recommendation to go somewhere else. You know, that's one of the real problems, is that it's hard to, it can be difficult to get teachers to leave or principals to leave, and sometimes people essentially will make the deal that they'll get someone out by helping them get a job somewhere else. And that's unfortunate. And we have laws that also tend to make that happen more, because you can get sued if you give someone a negative recommendation and aren't able to really back it up. So in any case, to wrap up, I think that we find substantial variation in estimates of principal quality. We find that the least effective principals are the least likely to remain in a school. The evidence is consistent with the notion that the management of teacher composition is one channel through which principals influence school quality, but those results are quite preliminary. There's little or no evidence that the most effective principals are disproportionately likely to leave even high-poverty schools. So principals are important, and this is consistent, I think, with this view that the management of the school is a very important mechanism for raising the quality of instruction, but it's very difficult to do because you can't regulate it by regulating the training of principals or the characteristics of principals, that when you set up systems that have measurement of how well schools do, that you have to provide incentives in the system and a willingness to manage in the system to make sure that better people are being rewarded, better behaviors are being rewarded. And that's one of the primary levers that are available, at least in Texas, to improve the quality of instruction.